The young and the restless spoilers as Genoa City's early morning haze settled over the Abbott estate. Lily's thoughts churned with a mixture of hope, dread, and an aching nostalgia she could scarcely contain. It had been months, no, years, since Cain Ashby had walked out of her life, leaving behind memories of laughter, late nights spent planning for the future, and whispered promises beneath the vault of stars. The news of his return, now embodied in the handsome and enigmatic visage of Billy Flynn, had spread through the city like wildfire. Every whispered rumor, every tentative conversation among friends, underscored the fact that Cain was back, and that he was more captivating, more compelling than ever before. Yet even as Lily rehearsed the moment she would finally see him again, a tremor of guilt rippled through her thoughts, dragging her back to the day that had shattered everything she had built with Cain, the night she had lost control of her car, the blaring sirens that followed, and the accidental tragedy that had claimed Hillary's life and sent Lily spiraling into a prison cell of her own making. In that lonely cell, Lily had confronted her darkest fears. That she would never again feel the warmth of forgiveness, the touch of Cain's steady hand, or the promise of a shared future. And yet now, with Cain's name echoing through Genoa City's power corridors once more, Lily dared to believe that redemption might still lie within her grasp. From the moment she left prison, Lily had devoted every waking hour to rebuilding her life, to proving that the accident was precisely that, an accident, not a crime of malice. She had found solace in her garden, coaxing blooms to life even as her own spirit felt withered. She had volunteered at the local clinic, offering comfort to families whose grief mirrored her own. But nothing she did could erase the specter of Aristotle Dumas, often described by the city's elite as the shadow behind countless boardroom conspiracies, yet somehow inexorably entwined with Lily's existence. Rumor had it that Dumas watched her every move, that his agents had followed her out of the prison gates, and that his icy voice had curled into her dreams, admonishing her from the darkness. "Stay away from what you cannot control," the whispers said he had warned. But Lily refused to cower, even as her heart pounded with every footstep in the hallway, every unexpected knock at her door. She reminded herself that Aristotle Dumas, for all his reputation as a faceless puppet master, was ultimately mortal, and that she had survived worse than the threat of his influence. Long ago, she had learned that courage was not the absence of fear but the resolve to act despite it. Meanwhile, within the polished halls of the Bronte, the tension between Dumas and his reluctant protégé Damian simmered like a cauldron on the brink of boiling over. Damian, junior scion of a minor yet ambitious family, had been charged with keeping Lily at arm's length, a task he undertook with trembling loyalty. Dumas had been explicit: Lily would remain untouchable, her life governed not by her own desires but by the dictates of his unseen empire. And yet, when Damian caught sight of Lily at the annual charity gala, resplendent in a gown of midnight blue, her eyes glinting with determination, his very soul rebelled. He found himself drawn to her vulnerability, to the quiet strength she radiated despite the weight of past mistakes. In a moment of reckless defiance, Damian had allowed the unspoken connection between them to flourish for a heartbeat, a sympathetic glance when Lily struggled to navigate the throng, a whispered encouragement as she delivered a speech about second chances. Unbeknownst to Damian, Dumas had learned of his lapse through networked informants. The message that followed was as chilling as the lacquered black Mercedes that Elliot Dumas, Aristotle's eldest nephew, drove through the stormy streets that very night. Any further indiscretions would result in consequences far more terrifying than exile. Damian's relief at escaping immediate retribution was matched only by his anguish over the thought of betraying Lily's trust. He confided his fears to a sympathetic technician in Dumas's lab, lamenting that his heart had betrayed him even as his loyalty should have remained unshakable. Yet the wheels of fate refused to halt at Damian's crisis of confidence. News of Cain's imminent return had reached Dumas through the grapevine of privileged insiders, sparking a calculating gleam in the dark lord of Genoa City's eyes. He realized that Lily's former husband, Cain, the man whose calm wisdom had once balanced her fiery spirit, posed both a direct threat to his designs and a captivating enigma he could scarcely ignore. If he could manipulate the reunion, steer Cain into a trap of his own making, Dumas could extend his web of influence deeper than ever before. But to do so, he would first need to isolate Lily, to sever the tenuous bonds of trust she shared with both Damian and her own convictions. He began to orchestrate a series of subtle provocations. An unsigned note slipped beneath Lily's door suggesting that Cain's return was not as it seemed, a cryptic phone call in the dead of night warning her to stay away from any reconciliation, and a rumor spread through social channels that Cain's motives were far from honorable. Each incident was designed to sow seeds of doubt in Lily's mind, to paralyze her with indecision just as she prepared to open her heart once more. As the day of Cain's arrival drew near, Lily found herself caught in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Every memory of their past life together, sunlit walks along the harbor, whispered secrets exchanged under the canopy of an ancient oak, the simple bliss of knowing she was loved, pulled her forward. Yet the specter of Aristotle Dumas and the ghost of the accident that had torn her world apart held her back, as if invisible handcuffs bound her to a cycle of guilt and regret. She wrestled with her doubts late into the night, her mind replaying the moment the taxi's headlights had blinded her, the crushing realization that her momentary lapse had caused Hilary's demise, the juror's verdict that had sent her away. She wondered if Cain would still look at her with the same affection he had once shown, or if the years apart and the stain on her record would render her forever unworthy of his forgiveness. Above all, she feared that whatever hope she had nurtured would be extinguished by Dumas's relentless machinations. On the eve of Cain's return, Lily stood alone on the balcony of her penthouse, the wind tousling her hair as she stared out at the glittering city below. In her hand, she held a single rose, pale pink, its petals soft as a sigh, the same variety Cain had once given her on their first anniversary. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, drawing strength from the memory of his steady presence. "I am not the same woman who made that terrible mistake," she whispered to the night. "I am stronger now, wiser, and more deserving of love than I ever was." In that moment, the phone in her purse buzzed with a short, unfamiliar vibration. Her pulse quickened as she unwrapped the screen to read the words that would change everything. "Hello, Ms. Abbott. I've been waiting for you." Lily's breath caught in her throat as she recognized that voice, calm, resonant, edged with a dark amusement she had only ever heard once before. It was the voice that had delivered so many ultimatums, that had shaped destinies from behind the curtain. It was Aristotle Dumas himself, speaking to her through the silence of the night, bridging the chasm between her past and the uncertain path ahead. In that single moment, every fear and every flicker of hope collided within her chest. The stage was set for a confrontation that would decide not only her future with Cain Ashby, whose return was now imminent, but the very essence of her redemption. As the city lights winked below, Lily knew that when Cain stepped off the private jet at the Abbott airstrip, he would find a woman transformed by loss, strengthened by survival, and unbreakably determined to reclaim her life, no matter the cost. And when she finally faced him, she would stand tall, ready to embrace the love she had fought so hard to earn, even as the shadows of Aristotle Dumas lengthened around them both. As whispers swirl through the marble hallways of Newman Enterprises and the hushed salons of Chancellor, Winters alike, the name Cain Ashby has become less a memory and more a living, breathing promise of upheaval. 2 months ago, insiders first murmured that Billy Flynn would step into Cain's well-worn shoes, and ever since, every clue has pointed toward a seismic shift in Genoa City's hidden power structures. Then Amanda Sinclair reappeared, her return as dramatic as a thunderclap, and dropped hints so pointed that the only plausible conclusion is that Aristotle Dumas, the shadowy architect behind every unsolved corporate scandal, walks among us in the guise of our beloved scarlet and blue hero. Amanda spoke with reverence of Dumas's deep respect for Neil Winters, as if he carried personal knowledge of Winters's triumphs and tragedies in his pocket. She spoke too of Lily's history, of intimate details that no outsider could glean without years of observation or the kind of access only a husband might enjoy. All of this could mean only one thing. Cain Ashby, as returned by Billy Flynn's handsome visage, is not merely an old flame rekindled but the very man whose invisible hand has manipulated Genoa City's pulse for months. Yet as tantalizing as this revelation may be, it does not guarantee the swift reunion of Lily and Cain. For Lily, every beat of her heart is caught in the vice of past guilt and future dread. For Cain, the prospect of revealing himself as Dumas is fraught with peril. Lily Winters Abbott, having weathered the agony of Hilary's death and the humiliation of a prison sentence, has rebuilt her life stone by stone, and she has no appetite for another deceiver disguised in a familiar face. Though her heart thrums to every childhood memory, every promise once whispered beneath moonlit balconies, she steels herself against hope. Cain's supposed return stirs storms of emotion. The ache of his absence, the betrayal of secrets kept too long, the terror that the man she loved could be the architect of her every misfortune. In quiet moments before dawn, Lily walks the veranda of her penthouse, fingertips brushing freshly planted orchids as though drawing strength from their resilience. She recalls the countless hours she spent tending broken things, her career, her friendships, her own spirit, and wonders if she can afford another fracture, however gilded by love. Rumors that Dumas knows her down to the tremor in her voice leave her sleepless, scanning each shadow for signs of betrayal. If Cain is indeed Aristotle Dumas, then the very foundation of her trust is a house of cards, and if he is the man who once comforted her in darkness, the one she learned to forgive, then the prospect of reconciliation becomes a labyrinth from which there may be no escape. And yet, from the rustle of the Abbott family tree emerges a new contender for Cain's heart. Sally's Spectra. When news of Sally's rekindled fascination with Dumas's machinations reached Kent's Fashion Council, many dismissed it as idle gossip. But Sally's curiosity runs deeper than most. She sees in Cain not only a storied past but an opportunity to defy expectation. Their first encounter, an accidental meeting in the hushed corners of a Winters Foundation gala, was electric. Sally, clutching a velvet clutch emblazoned with the Spectra crest, caught Cain's eye as he eyed a row of fundraising invitations bearing the Dumas seal. She laughed, teasing him about his paling at the familiar crest, and offered to be his spy, to lend him the specter of her bold imagination. He, in turn, admired her unquenchable spirit, the fearless way she strode into boardrooms and atelier workshops alike, unafraid to challenge the fiercest corporate rival. As they spoke of design trends and the ethics of high-fashion supply chains, a professional synergy emerged. Sally's avant-garde vision could enrich Cain's understanding of sustainable innovation, and Cain's steadfast integrity could anchor Sally's creative flights. The chemistry between them was undeniable, a flicker of something new that promised laughter where grief had once ruled, partnership where isolation had reigned. Yet beneath that spark lies a tangle of complications. Lily's potential fury at seeing them together could sever any hope of future reconciliation, decimating the investment Cain once harbored in rebuilding his first great love. Aristotle Dumas, if he truly inhabits Cain's skin, would surely exploit such vulnerability, pitting one relationship against another to ensure that Cain remains a divided force, unable to mount a united front against corporate warlords. And Sally herself, ambitious and independent, would not tolerate being a mere footnote in Cain's saga. She expects equality, respect for her own legacy, and the freedom to steer her destiny as surely as she would orchestrate a Spectra runway spectacle. Nonetheless, the possibility of Cain finding refuge in Sally's buoyant world of color palettes and bold strokes feels like a balm after months of clandestine maneuvering. In Sally, Cain might rediscover joy untainted by shadows. In Cain, Sally might uncover the steadfast ally who understands the weight of familial empires and the yearning for authenticity beneath the gilded facades. Genoa City's stage is set for a drama that will eclipse even the most epic of retrospectives. Cain Ashby, returned in Billy Flynn's magnetizing form, stands at a crossroads where love, loyalty, and legacy intersect. Lily Winters Abbott, fortified by her journey through loss and redemption, braces herself against the gales of hope and fear. Sally Spectra, ever the bold outsider, extends a hand to the man she admires, an offer of partnership that could rewrite both their stories. And behind them all, the insinuating presence of Aristotle Dumas looms, a test of character so exacting that it will demand every ounce of courage from those who dare to outwit him. As the city holds its breath, awaiting the unmasking of its greatest enigma, one truth remains irrefutable. In Genoa City, no secret stays buried, no alliance holds unchanged, and every tender pulse of the heart can echo across empires with the force of a declaration. Whether Cain finds solace in Lily's embrace, excitement in Sally's companionship, or solitude in the shadows he may have cast, the choices he makes now will reverberate through every ostentatious boardroom, every clandestine corridor, and every heart brave enough to hope.